Are you always coming up with ideas? Do you marvel at successful business owners? Do you hate being told what to do? Ever take things apart just to see how they work? Are you a dreamer? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wharton, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Pro Tapes and Specialties is the world leader in tape manufacturing and specialty conversion with over 40 years of experience. In addition to our pro brand of high-quality specialty adhesive tapes, we provide contract converting services that help improve your profitability, streamline your supply chain, and reduce inventory cost. We offer the most complete range of converting capabilities in the industry, such as cloth tape, double-coated tape, specialty tape, paper tape, masking tape, vinyl tape,
carton sealing tape, adhesive transfer tape, duct tape, foam tape, electrical tape, filament tape, foil tape, reflective tape.
And the tape just keeps on rolling. Visit us online today at www.protapes.com or call us at 800-345-0234. Pro Tapes, it's just how we roll.
Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Entrepreneur Enclave, Life's Coming Attraction. I am your host, Kevin Wortham. Today, you are going to be amazed. Brother, Dr. Dale Caldwell. How are you, my friend? How are you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm doing quite well. Happy to be on your show.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you, man. Listen, we are going to take all the time we need. We're going to give you the platform because, man, you are doing some great work out here. And I certainly want the listening audience to know everything that you are doing. So we're going to start with the very first time that I met you. You were here in Trenton. You were the headmaster for Village Charter School, correct?
Yes, I was. A few years ago, and that was just a great experience and a very educational experience.
Yes. And so while you were here, I had a chance to connect with you. I think the Minding Our Business program, we gave you an award. And then, yes. And then at the time of the award, you had shared with us just who you were because you gave both Dr. Hernandez and I 2 books to read. And the one I think was called Intelligent Influencers.
Yes, Intelligent Influencers, yep.
And I said to myself, this guy is deep. And then to make matters even better, I didn't know that your father was a Methodist pastor. He's heavy duty in the Methodist Church, and he knew Bishop May, who was my pastor at that time.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, he was married by Bishop May.
Wow. And now, this is a secret. I didn't know this. I didn't know you were a pastor, Dale.
Yeah, well, it happened last August. So I'm pastor of Covenant United Methodist Church in Plainfield.
Wow. New Jersey. Congratulations, man. So we've got a lot of stuff to unpack. So let's start from the beginning. So you do your undergrad at Princeton University, correct?
Yes.
Why did you?
And that was my first time living in Jersey. So.
Okay. Why did you want to come to Princeton? What was Princeton offering for you at that time?
Well, one of the realities of Princeton, Princeton historically had been one of the schools that was not as inclusive. When Woodrow Wilson was president, he actually wrote that he didn't think any black students would be welcome there. But what Princeton did is because everybody knows Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, but Princeton didn't have the graduate programs that Harvard and Yale have.
Yes.
And there was a real focus on undergraduate education. And I'll tell you, Kevin, I did well in school, but I was kind of lazy. I really needed to be pushed, and Princeton pushed me to a level that forced me, and I think I lived some of those principles, forced me to be more than I would have been otherwise.
Got you. So what would you say about your time in Princeton? Did you see at that time? Did you see racial inequality happening, or you were just a young teenager and you were like, I'm going to stay in school and stay focused? Yeah,
well, there was some in the community. I was there during a time when we the anti-apartheid movement.
Yes.
So there was a very active black student population that was protesting against the Kruger banks that sold the Krugerrand and other things. And so there was that activism on campus. And I was somewhat involved, not as focused there. My leadership experience was really honed there because I was a financial aid student, so I had to work somewhere.
Yes.
So I worked in the dining hall. And so I started out sweeping floors. And at Princeton, in the Commons dining hall, they served 20,000 meals a week.
Wow.
And students did everything but cook the food. Usually the staff cooked the food. And so I started out sweeping the floors, and then I became a crew captain. And then I eventually became a student manager, and I became the CEO of the dining hall. So I had 400 Princeton students below me, really doing 20,000 meals a week, doing everything but cooking it. And that experience really taught me leadership. And so I'm still utilizing a lot of what I learned there and the many different things I'm leading now.
As well as the wonderful connections I assume you made while you were there.
Yeah, some great, really some great connections, great people. So, I mean, some of the people that worked for me that were sweeping floors, one's a, congressman. His dad was a U.S. senator from Maryland. He's a congressman now. So some pretty influential people.
Wow. So you leave Princeton, you graduate from Princeton, and you do your grad work at the Wharton Business School, correct? You got your MBA from there.
Yeah.
Now
from the Wharton School, yeah.
Now, what was that like?
Well, it was interesting, and so, Princeton, I kind of knew I wanted to do business, and so socially Princeton wasn't that great, and so but going to Philly and going to Wharton, I had a chance to really experience Philadelphia, and it was kind of my first time I really had a chance to live, and Wharton was challenging, but really not as challenging as Princeton.
Okay.
In many ways. And because everybody's focused and you're working on business and you're working, so it was a lot more interesting than a lot of other stuff. But it was a great experience. Wharton's one of the top schools and majored in finance.
Yes.
But one of the things, I worked in the Small Business Development Center.
Okay.
And I don't know, you're familiar with small SBDCs, right?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah. And so the audience, so they're funded by the Small Business Administration of the federal government, and they provide free consulting to local businesses.
Yes.
So as a student, it was my exposure to work with businesses, many of them Black-owned businesses, to really advise them on finance, marketing, operations. And I love that, Kevin. I just love that. And that's what really convinced me to get a job with Deloitte, what was Touche Ross, and then Deloitte Consulting.
Wow. Now, I just want to take a break there for a second. I just want to throw a little joke in there. Now, I don't know if the listening audience knows, but the University of Pennsylvania is in the hood of West Philadelphia.
West Philly, yeah, exactly. So
you were really around your own people, whether you wanted to be or not.
Exactly. It was a good experience. Now, I grew up in Black communities. I grew up in Harlem and Roxbury and Boston.
Yes.
But I went to some white private schools.
Yes.
And so it was good to kind of get back into Philly and hang out in Philly, and I really enjoyed my time in West Philly.
Wow.
So it was it was a good experience.
So now, while you're working for these the big 8 accounting firms, when does your real entrepreneurial experience, I guess, when does that kick in, Dale? When you say, I want to go out on my own.
And I really kind of had it at Deloitte. So one of the things that Deloitte would let you do is so I started something with a colleague of mine, Tim Washington. We started something called the Association of Black and Latino Employees. Okay. And I was the first Black senior manager in the New York, New Jersey consulting offices of Deloitte.
Yes.
And it was Touche Ross when I joined it. So it was a big 8, and then Deloitte bought Touche Ross, and so it became Deloitte and Touche, and then now Deloitte. And so I started this program, Kevin, because Deloitte was a major sponsor of Take Your Daughters to Work Day.
I remember that, yes.
Remember that program? And now it's called Take Your Kids to Work Day. And they participated in the program, but Kevin, none of the kids looked like you or me.
Got you.
It was a great program, and they were all white kids. And I said, to the managing director, I said, this is the entrepreneurial spirit. I said, we need to do something called Take Your Community to Work Day.
Wow, okay.
And so he liked the idea. So we brought 7th graders from Jersey City and Newark.
Yes.
Mostly Black and Latino.
Yes.
Almost all Black and Latino. And instead of just kind of giving them a lecture, we had them participate as if they're new employees. So they did a tax module and a consulting module. And the kids did a great job, and it was a lot of fun. And the employees saw how smart these kids were.
Yes. Almost like
we
shadowing.
ended with, it's really, exactly.
Yes.
Well, Shadow, but and Shadow Day was actually modeled after my program.
Okay.
But Shadow Day is only as good as the individual. So we had them as a group.
Okay.
And really training them. And it was really interesting. So 2 out of the 3 years we were doing it, the worst match, so we had something in the tax module where they would fill out like in a one-page tax form.
Yes.
And the person who finished first and was correct got $2.
Okay.
And 2 out of 3 years, the worst math student in the class actually won the game because there was $2. And so this thing was great, and then it was so successful. We had Deloitte. We did it in offices around the Northeast.
Yes.
And then a friend of mine, one of my best friends, a guy named Dexter Bridgman, had founded something called Mentor Magazine.
Yes.
And which really talked about mentoring and so on. And he had a relationship with United Airlines. So he and I flew out to United Airlines to pitch this program to take a community to Workday.
Yes.
And United Airlines loved the program, picked up the program, and we're still doing it at Deloitte, and did it, Kevin, get this, in 80 U.S. cities and 11 countries.
Wow.
At their airports.
Wow.
And what they
Implementing your
did is
program.
on the first it's called Take a Community Workday program.
Yes.
And on the first Wednesday in March every year, they would bring kids, and this was before 9/11, because so the kids would hand out tickets. They would be on the baggage stand. They'd have lunch on planes.
Yes.
And they bought, and they were in Chicago, and they said any kid that went through this program would be guaranteed to have an interview, not a job, but an interview.
Wow.
Going forward. And so then they had video from literally 11 countries, 80 cities, but then 9/11 killed the program.
Wow.
Because you couldn't do that with kids. In fact, they even in Newark, the Miller Street School, they actually took the kids from Miller Street School on the weekend to London for a weekend in London.
What? Wait.
And for that, because they have the planes. They're flying there. It didn't cost them anything.
True, but I'm saying, man, that's an incredible experience. Man, wow.
Exactly. And so that was kind of an entrepreneur. So I was still at Deloitte, but that entrepreneurial program that I came up with and made it happen, and that really spurred my belief in entrepreneurship. And then when I left there, ironically, I left to go to start a nonprofit, and I ended up making more money than I did at Deloitte too, because I became the founding executive director of the Newark Alliance.
Okay.
And so the Newark Alliance, which is still around today, Art Ryan, the CEO of Prudential Financial, Ray Chambers, the billionaire who used to own the Nets and the Devils,
absolutely,
and former Governor Tom Kean were the three people who founded it. And they did the search firm, and they hired me as the first executive director.
Wow.
And then I worked in economic development and education, worked with Sharp James. This is long before Corey was involved. And Marion Bolden, who used to be superintendent in Newark, and really using the entrepreneurial skills to get that organization going and really do innovative things in Newark.
Wow. Now I'm quite sure while you were in Newark, our paths might have crossed, because at that time I was working for an organization called NIFTY, the National Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship. We were out of New York City, founded by Steve Mariotti. And Ray Chambers was one of our largest funders at that time, because he was funding the program in Newark, both his organizations, the Ready Foundation, as well as the Boys and Girls Club.
Ready Foundation. Yep.
So I'm quite sure, Dale, our paths have crossed, because when I first met you down here at the Village Charter School, I'm looking at you, but I'm not looking at you because I'm saying this is not my first time meeting you, but I could not make the connection, but now I'm hearing it. So please continue. I'm sorry.
No. Again, the same thing. It's funny. I felt the same way. I said, I know this guy.
Yeah.
And has the same passion. And so we did that, and then I left and I went into the McGreevy administration. I was the deputy commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs.
Okay.
And tried to bring some entrepreneurial spirit to that. So I was kind of second in charge of this $1 billion department with 1,100 people. So I always wanted experience in the public, private, and nonprofit sector.
Yes.
Because I really want to understand how they can work together, where they have challenges. And so, doing the Deloitte and then the Newark Alliance and then the Department of Community Affairs was great experience.
Now, let me stop you for a second there, Dale, because I want the audience to know this too. Why do you think the public-private venture is the way to go to solve some of the ills that we have in our communities today? Why do you think that?
It's essential. I mean, it's really essential because one, they're very different animals and they do things very differently.
Yes.
And that your organization, the entrepreneurial stuff that you're doing with young people, corporations aren't going to take that on. They're not capable of doing that.
Yes.
They need somebody that has that expertise and to really support that. And so often you do a great job, but so many nonprofits kind of expect corporations to give them money, but they have to tell them why they need the money.
Yes. Now,
and so it's such an essential part of America.
Keeping in that vein, how do we encourage more cities, large and small, to have that narrative? So if you are an administrator or a manager or a mayor of a city, how do we get the mayor and his administration to have that focal point that it must be a public-private venture? It can't be all public, but it has to be a combination of the two. How do we create that narrative? How do we get those mayors to see that way?
Well, and that's a great question because it's a real challenge.
Okay.
And what happens is a lot of the folks that are mayors, good people, they mean well. They've really been in one area.
Yes.
They don't understand the relationship, the importance of the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, and how with the right synergy they can transform the world.
Very true.
And so it's up to people like you and me to really kind of preach the evangelical about these public-private partnerships and to really lay out the problems too. I think a lot of times people don't really understand how challenging it is in urban communities, with poverty and et cetera.
Yes. The urban community just on one issue is phenomenal in terms of how we just don't get it right, but we need to. So let me just add, I'm going to jump forward real quickly. When did you think that you needed to birth a book, Dale?
That I needed to do what?
When did you think it was time for you to birth a book, to create a book, to write a book?
Well, I learn. I find that I learn when I write.
Okay.
And so the first book I did was called School to Work to Success.
Yes.
Because one of the things I found is that so many parents, and young people don't have anybody that can tell them how to develop a resume, how to interview for a job, what's a behavioral interview, and so that's what I kind of do in that book is answer those questions. And it's amazing how well received it's been. But also among older people who've been working in the same place for 30 years and they're finally looking for a job, they need those basics too. But it was really geared towards young people in college and high school in the community. So that book and the positive response that I got to that book inspired me to write a few more. Wow.
Okay, so but you wrote this book while you were under I guess your own leadership. You had started your own foundation, your organization, your not-for-profit.
Yeah, I started a group called Operation Education.
Okay.
To really build on the techie community Workday.
Okay.
And and so that that and the book really fed into that. And for my dad and my mom was a teacher for 50 years.
Yeah.
And Kevin, like you, I mean, I just felt influenced to say, I've got to give back. I have a lot of information I need to share with folks who don't have access to it.
Yes. Now you had mentioned your parents, and I guess I just want to dovetail on that, but just move off a little bit. How influential were your parents in your decision to become an entrepreneur, to become a pastor, and just to go off and see the world? How influential were they? Well,
it's funny. My mom and they were. My dad was entrepreneurial, being head of a church. My mom was not because she was a teacher. And so one of the things that I'm pleased is having an opportunity to be the head of school at the village charter school.
Yes.
I was kind of living the life my mom had. So I was in education.
Yes.
And so my dad was in. So I became a certified lay minister, and I've been active in the church. I just never thought that I would be a pastor.
Got you.
And my dad unfortunately passed away in September of 2020. And Kevin, I know. So I got a call last July.
Yes.
From the district superintendent who said, there's this beautiful church in Plainfield, and they're looking for a pastor. And Dale, we know you, we know your leadership.
Yes.
How would you like to be the pastor?
Wow.
And Kevin, it's when God is calling, you can't say no. So I didn't, I didn't have to think about anything. And I know my dad, who had passed away,
yes,
had something to do with that.
Absolutely.
Because, and that's my one of my regrets in life is that my dad is not alive to see me pastor a church.
Absolutely.
Because he would, he probably had given up on me doing that. And I'm the fifth generation of pastors.
Wow.
Of Methodist pastors.
Wow.
In my family.
Now, as they say in church, your father sees all and knows all in the spirit. But I understand how you wish in the physical presence he would be here to see that. Oh wow, that's wonderful.
Yep. And he knows, and I'm sure he has something to do with it.
Oh, absolutely.
But just to share,
yes.
So my great grandfather is a guy named Bishop Morris Brown that Morristown College in Atlanta was named after.
Wait, time out.
The second bishop of the AME Church.
Let's slow down, Dale, because that's information. Let's say that one more time, please.
So Bishop Morris Brown. You've heard of Morris Brown College.
Absolutely.
He was the second bishop in the AME Church, and he was my great grandfather.
Wow.
And I had done some research. My grandmother had talked about that, and I went down years ago and to Samuel Jolly, who was the president at the time, and told him this. And so they had given me an honorary something, and I got a chance to be honored with John Lewis. So I got to meet John Lewis down there. So that was the great grandfather. We're still fighting, but my last name should be Rebel. So I did the family history.
Yes.
And so we found the Caldwell plantation in Guilford County, North Carolina. All my people are from Greensboro, North Carolina, Guilford County.
Yes.
And there was an article about that my great grandfather was born on the Caldwell plantation to a woman named Jane Caldwell and John Rebels, a Lumbee Indian.
Yes.
Well, John Rebels, the Rebels, so my name really should be Rebels. We found that tangentially when researching it, that Hiram Rebels, that was somehow related to Hiram Rebels, who was the first elected black person in Congress.
Wow.
Out of Mississippi, but he was from North Carolina. He was a Lumbee Indian from North Carolina.
Wow.
And he was a Methodist minister. And then James Asa Brown, my grandmother's side, was a Methodist Episcopal minister. My grandfather and my dad. So, Kevin, you can run as far as you want, but you can't hide.
You can't hide you cannot hide, man. But
so I have that, and it's been it's almost. It's just natural kind of doing the church, and I just love the church and love the people and love what we can do. Yes. And it's a beautiful, the church seats 400 people.
Wow.
And the membership had gone down with the pandemic and other things, but we're reviving it. But it's also part of the whole entrepreneurship is part of our ministry.
Absolutely. Dale, listen, thank God this is my own show. We can just keep talking because one question opens up another question, opens up another question. So this is fantastic because I want the listening audience to hear your complete story in one fell swoop. So we're just going to take our time and just unpack everything, right? So
excellent.
So you are pastoring, and you're also the executive director and founder, if I'm correct, of the Fairleigh Dickinson Entrepreneurial or Family Entrepreneurial Center, correct?
Well, yeah, I'm not the founder. Now, It's been around about 32 years.
Okay.
So I've been there about 3.5 years. But I have been leading the program. And our focus is to support research, entrepreneurship, and we focus on family businesses, veteran businesses, student businesses, and urban businesses. Kind of expanded to do that. And so we really have become evangelical about the importance of entrepreneurship and programs like yours and others around the state.
And you find time to do all of this. That's amazing, man.
Well, Kevin, it is. So I'm pushing this thing called Coach Leadership because one of the things when people ask and I tell people what I'm involved in.
Yes.
it really, I almost don't. So let me give you. So right now, currently, I'm president of the New Brunswick Board of Education.
Wow.
I'm president of the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey. I'm president of the College Achieve Charter School, and I'm vice president of the College Achieve Central. So I'm on 4 school boards and president of 3 school boards. And then I'm doing a church, and I'm running the institute, and so I love volunteering. And then I'm on the Housing Authority in New Brunswick as well.
Wow.
And
man,
but the trick is, Kevin, see, it's not about me. So every one of those organizations, there's an amazing executive director,
very true,
like you, that really does it, that does the work. Mark Finkelstein at the Educational Service Commission, which is one of the most amazing education institutions in New Jersey. It educates the hardest to educate young people, the most vulnerable young people who are on the autism spectrum, who are multiply disabled, and who have emotional challenges.
Yes.
Mark does an amazing job of that organization. We have Aubrey Johnson, who's the head of New Brunswick Board of the superintendent. And, we have Mike Piskel and Jennifer McInerney at College Achieve. So you have those kinds of people. I set direction. I do the vision. Yes. I bring the entrepreneurial perspective, and they run the day-to-day.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love it, man. I love it. But you have the broad shoulders. You have the vision to carry all this forth. So I am so glad that you're taking time out to be on the podcast with me. So I know we're jumping around, but I know at the end of the interview, people are going to see the consistency of how faith is driving everything that you do.
Yes.
And I didn't know that you had spent a lot of time on the state level doing some governmental work with McGreevy. Yep. I didn't know that. So that's why it's so good to do the podcast, because I'm finding out so much about you, Dale. That's why I love you. That's why I enjoy, the relationship that you and I are beginning to expand and put together. Wow.
Absolutely.
So when you were with the McGreevy administration, you said you were the deputy commissioner. Now, what were you
of the Department of Community Affairs?
Now, what were some of your responsibilities at that time?
So I managed internally. Susan Vass-Levin was the commissioner.
Yes.
And she had me as the chief operating officer. So I managed a lot of the internal programs.
Okay.
And so if you know DCA is in charge of housing.
Yes.
DCA is in charge of women's programs. It has the fire academy. It has at the time the Hispanic programs. It used to have. And so it was a conglomeration of different departments that grew out of the riots in Newark.
Okay. Because
of the housing. So it really was the DCA inspected the amusement rides. It inspects housing and other things. And so as deputy commissioner, I helped to oversee each of those programs and was able to use some influence to help some people get some things done and work out of the bureaucracy.
Wow. Now, do you, I guess a challenging question right now, do you see where we have gotten better or worse as a state in terms of meeting the needs of Black and brown people?
Well, it's both, really. It's gotten better in some ways and worse in other ways.
Okay.
I think one of the realities is, and so in my consulting, and so Deloitte, when I was at Deloitte, Kevin, what it did, it helped me analyze problems in a way that most people don't have that. So I actually learned in a lot of ways more at Deloitte than Princeton or Wharton.
Yes.
And you start to analyze things and you realize that sometimes things happen and it's not about bad people. It's just the nature of structures and systems. And the problem, the challenge is that now I've been a Democrat my whole life, but the problem is that the Democrats and Republicans, their allegiance is to the parties.
Yes.
It has not been to the state. Gotcha. And it's not because people are bad. It's not because it's just it's a behemoth. And so what happens is there are a lot of good ideas and a lot of good politicians, a lot of good programs, but they may not fit into the agenda of a political party.
Yes.
And I think we are at a stage now where we need to really, really challenge. And so one of the things that I've just started recently is this thing called Voter Up New Jersey, Voter Up NJ.
Yes.
And so Instagram and the idea is to say it's not just enough to register. It's really to voter up and really begin to challenge. And I think what we need to do in the communities to challenge around some of the issues in the Black and brown community.
Yes.
And one of the things I learned is that the loudest voice with the most money gets the attention.
Yes.
And it's not because people are bad. And part of my challenge, and I've learned this through entrepreneurship, because I'm, as I said, evangelical about entrepreneurship. And I'm realizing that you have one party that's big government, another party that's big business, and entrepreneurs have been overlooked.
Yes.
And it's not because people don't understand its value. It's that there hasn't been the lobbying and focus to really push people to say entrepreneurship is the answer. It's not just a good thing to do. It's the answer.
Yes.
And nobody's really pushing that in any politically driven way.
Wow.
And we need to begin to do that. So the idea of voter up in J is to say, and that's one of the things I love talking about. They created this thing called entrepreneur zones. I'm working with the state on that, to go into urban communities and create this ecosystem of entrepreneurs so that they can be successful and they can create jobs and they can reduce poverty. And when I talk about that, that is one of the few issues that conservatives and liberals come together around.
Very true.
Entrepreneurship in urban communities. And so we found something in this divided country that we can. So I'm really trying to push entrepreneurship as a major agenda for both parties.
But let me ask this question, because I've been there where you've got a good program because it has a proven track record, but sometimes because of the cliquishness of people in a certain administration, they won't call you to say, would you come and be a part of the solution? So we also have to work through that as well, and that's a whole other podcast for us to talk about. But I love the work that you're continuing to do. So now give us the Instagram, I guess.
So it's thank you. It's Voter in J. It's Voter Up, VOTERUPNJ.
Yes. Voter
Up in J. And just while we're just getting started, I thank you for allowing me to mention this on the podcast. But yeah, and the idea is to push, instead of this partisanship, to bring people together, to push for things like entrepreneurship, to push for things like property tax reduction.
Yes.
So, to push for things like ending poverty.
Now let me ask this question.
Go ahead.
It's amazing. Why is there such a deep connection between our spirituality, our faith, and the government sometimes? Why is that?
Well, in the Black experiences, that the faith has gotten us through.
Yes.
That's the only thing that kept us alive and kept us to survive.
Yes.
And but the faith in God, and so sometimes we take that faith and we put faith in the wrong place.
Yes. But I guess what I mean, Dale, is, or I guess the question I'm asking is, why is there such a deep connection between men and women of faith, challenging the government, wanting to run in government? Why has that been such a deep connection?
You mean as far as why are people running for office, or why?
I guess why are people in the faith-based space running for political office, in the Black and brown community?
Yeah, well, and that's a good question. Well, part of it is that you have a constituency, you have a congregation, you have a population that is not being served by government as it is.
Yes.
And so you get a sense of, and one of the things in the short time I've been a pastor, I've done, I'm closer to seeing death. I've done, several funerals. One was 106, two were in their 20s.
Wow.
And you start to see, and they were 20, one was playing basketball at 23. Another had an asthma attack at 29.
Okay.
These were good kids. And one was 106.
Yes.
And so you really start to see, and then we're closer to poverty, and we're closer to hunger, we're closer to homelessness.
Yes.
And you start to see that. And one of the things that I say, Kevin, is that in America, there should be no poverty, because you don't even have to care about poor people. But if poor people can pay their bills, rich people get richer.
Yeah.
So there's fundamentally no reason to have poverty, widespread poverty in this country.
Yes. Wow. Now,
and that's part of the message of Voter Up.
Yes.
And they to say, why do we have poverty? People are paying welfare costs. They're doing it. Their taxes are higher because we're allowing this poverty to exist. We're not helping people find jobs.
Yes. Wow. And that's true.
And that's where entrepreneurship is. That's where the jobs are, and creating entrepreneurs like you're doing.
But I know that there's going to always be a small group of folk that the government is going to have to help no matter what. I understand that and I get that. But I do agree with you. You know, there are some folks that are physically capable of working or doing something or being creative that the government is just not challenging them or giving them the opportunity to do so. So we need to
let me
change
put
that.
some numbers to
Yes.
it. Mm-hmm. Kevin, so one of the things, so I got my doctorate after Wharton.
Yes.
In 2017, I got my doctorate from Seton Hall.
Yes.
And in education administration, a really great program and I really didn't like statistics before, but I had a great statistics professor.
Yes.
And really got to see the practical side of statistics. And so one of the things that I say, and I actually said this in the sermon, is that if you roll dice 1 million times and you counted all the numbers, you would get what they call as a bell curve.
Yes.
It looks like a mountain, right? In the bell curve. And so on a typical normal distribution, what happens is on either side, there's 16%.
Yes.
And so no matter what happens, 16% of the world is going to be incredibly rich and 16% of the world is going to be incredibly poor for reasons that they don't have. And so that's the number. So, and even in the Bible, Jesus said that you'll always have the poor among you,
yes.
but you're only going to have 16%. Right now, it's about 55% of New Jersey residents are poor based on the MIT living wage calculator, meaning that you need to make $65,500 to pay your bills on average in New Jersey. Okay. And 50% of the households aren't making that. So the difference between 16 and 50 is 34%. So yes. What we need to do and what every politician needs to do is support entrepreneurship and job creation to make sure that 34% of the households make more than $65,500. If we did that, that would transform our economy.
Wow, I love it.
So, and this is where you don't hear politicians, let's put numbers on it.
Yes.
And that we should hold them accountable for. And so the number is 1.3 million households
yes.
that are poor. So if you take that, so there'd be about 750,000 households. These are households, not individuals.
Yes.
That government should be focused on helping them make more than $65,500.
Okay.
It's clear. It's numbers. It's right there.
Yeah.
And you're not going to do it. IBM's not going to hire those folks.
Yes.
Who's going to do it? Entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Program you run. That's how we're going to help New Jersey. And guess what? That will reduce property taxes.
Yeah. The public-private venture. Yes.
The public-private venture focused on specific goals and numbers.
Now, one of the other things too, Doc, I thought you were going to add is if we go back to old school times, within the Black and brown community, it was always the pastor at the church, the pastor in the community, who always seemed to be the smartest one, who was always advocating for the needs of his people. And so a lot of times he or she was thrusted into advocating into politics. Do we still find that to be truthful today?
Yeah, and it is for a couple reasons. So one thing, and I've been very real with my friends. So many of my friends are from the islands, their families from the islands or from
yes.
Africa. And one of the things that I've said, and they agree, is that when you grow up in Jamaica or you grow up in Nigeria, you see Black people in every position.
Yes.
You know you can be anything you want to be.
Yes.
But us multi-generational African Americans, I've never met a Black bank president of a major bank.
Yes.
So I don't know, even with the Princeton and Wharton degree, that I could be a bank president.
Wow.
And so we don't have it. So the mindset, not to mention the legacy of slavery generation after generation, those things have held us back.
Yes.
And so people say, well, Dale, why are you doing well? You're multi-generational. It's because as you heard, my lineage is from pastors, and pastors had the blessing of being the CEOs of the community.
Yes.
So I have a responsibility, and because I come from folks that had advantages, about doing what I can to help those who didn't have advantage.
Yes. And
that's the drive. And that's where I think a lot of people are driven to say, I need to kind of forge a way for the people that have been left behind.
Excellent. Dale, we're going to take a break right there. We're not going to stop, but I just want to bring up something fun that I didn't know about you. Let's talk about the tennis. I didn't know that you were so involved in tennis. Man, you are like world class, brother.
Well, I've been involved. Tennis was my sport.
Yes.
Growing up, and I got nationally ranked in age group, and I was like number 5 in Connecticut. That helped me get into Princeton.
Okay, the tennis scholarship. Yes.
Yeah. Well, they didn't really give scholarships, but that added to the diversity of being able to get in.
Yes.
And so I became the first and unfortunately only Black president of the Eastern section.
Okay.
Which is all of New York and northern New Jersey and a part of Connecticut.
Yes.
And when I was in that position, this is one of the things, Kevin, that's important. If Black people have an opportunity to break the color barrier, they have to use that influence to make a difference. So when I was elected, and that's a pretty influential position in the tennis world, I called up this guy, Tony Trayberg, who actually wrote to him. He was former world number one and head of the International Tennis Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And they said, baseball has begun to accept the Negro League. Tennis needs to do the same thing with the American Tennis Association. The American Tennis Association was founded because Blacks couldn't play in white organizations in 1916. So they agreed, and we did an exhibit called Breaking the Barriers,
okay,
which is a 100-year history of Blacks in tennis.
Okay.
And that became their most successful exhibit. And so in doing that and being president and being ranked, I was just, one of the biggest honors I've ever had was last August, I was inducted into the Eastern Tennis Hall of Fame with Billie Jean King.
Oh man,
and
congratulations.
Some other
wow.
folks. So
yes.
So Billie Jean King, you saw that she threw out she tossed the coin at the Super Bowl.
Absolutely, yes, I saw that, yes.
And so I joked that, they asked me to do it, but I wanted to give Billie Jean a chance to do it. So
hey, Dale, if I was there and they'd asked me, they'd have to throw out 2 coins because I'm going to be right there with you, sister.
Exactly. But she's just a lovely,
Yes.
I don't think there's a celebrity who's more down to earth than her. She's genuinely concerned about education, about issues in the Black community, and she's just a wonderful, and her partner Ilana is just great. But so anyway, so tennis has been the big part. And Kevin, one of the things that I try to do is I push myself spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Yes.
So I like that balance, and I think that balance keeps my sanity as I'm doing all these things. So being involved in the church, being involved with tennis and other sports,
yes,
being involved with education.
Yes.
That balance really helps me feel grounded.
And also, Pastor, sometimes your members make you want to hit something. So it's best that you take it on the tennis ball.
Exactly. When I'm frustrated, just give me a tennis ball and I'm going to go out and hit that.
Now, I'm familiar with Albert Starks and the work that he's done here in Trenton through the Caldwell Park, I guess the New Jersey Tennis Association. Have you been active with them as well?
Yeah, well, I know them. I know them well. I haven't because I'm in Central.
Okay.
I haven't been as active with them, but I know their former executive directors and have done some work with them.
Yes.
It's an amazing program, and those courts are amazing.
Oh, man, I mean, he has turned those courts around with his passion and his ability to network and to connect and raise those much-needed funds. So we are grateful for him, New Jersey Tennis Association.
Do you play much? Do you play much yourself?
No. I played tennis probably when I was 7 years old over at Trenton High School. And then I got involved with it was like a come one come all track meet, And I said to my father, I'd rather run track, but because I had been practicing tennis for like 3 days, they give you a brand new racket. So I still have that racket, and I've never touched a tennis ball or racket since I've been 7 years old, almost 50 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's the one of my greatest thrills. Well, I'm actually certified to teach.
Okay.
So one of the thrills, Arthur Ashe had, before anybody knew about his illness, had wanted Blacks to use tennis as an executive sport to do networking.
Yes.
And he did a clinic for the New York Black NBA Association, and he asked me to co-teach with him.
Yes.
So I had a chance to co-teach with Arthur Ashe. So that's a thrill. That's one of my on-court thrills.
Dale, man, you are living your best life, man. Thank you, and for sharing. So now we want to jump back into your second book. I think it was your second book, The Influencers.
Yeah, Intelligent Influence.
Yes, tell us about that book because I found that interesting. That was the book that you gave to Dr. Hernandez and I.
Yeah,
yes.
and I had done a book. I've done a couple of books. Again, I write spiritually, mentally, and physically. So I did a couple of books on the fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22-23.
Yes.
So that was did 2 of them. The first one was actually my first book, and so the idea. And then I did the School to Work to Success, and then Intelligent Influence. And I did a book called Tennis in New York. So again, trying to do and I learn when I'm writing.
Yes.
So intelligent influence was, and I talked about the story at Princeton about the Commons Dining Hall, but the idea is I was writing this book on leadership, and I thought I had a whole new approach to leadership, but I'm an etymologist, so I looked up the definitions of leadership, command, and authority.
Yes.
And I found the word influence in each one of those definitions, so it got me studying this word influence, and I discovered that it's a word hidden in plain sight. That they'll say she's influential, he's influential. What does it mean? Are they have more social media followers? Are they rich? Are they powerful? But then they realize we do what we do, think the way we think, and accomplish what we accomplish because of influence. We're born as an empty cup, but these influences change us.
Wow.
And the example I use are accents, or English accents. That no child is born with an English accent, but they can be born in Brooklyn or London or Sydney, Australia, or Birmingham, Alabama, and they develop a very different English accent that stays with them. So think about our favorite sports teams, our culture, our religion. People in South Jersey that are Philly fans, people in North Jersey that are Jets, Giants fans.
Yes.
And our culture and our religion and all these influences. And then the research shows that our musical tastes develop between ages 14 and 24 or 25.
Yes.
And so we all have different music. And so that influence book has changed my life to realize that all there is influence, which means that if you understand that, you can make significant change. We can end poverty. We can reduce racism. We can do other things by influencing people, but you have to influence them in a way that's meaningful to them.
Wow. Wow.
And that's guiding a lot of what I'm doing and saying is that, and really using that influence model to encourage people to do the right thing.
I love it. I love it. So where do we go from here, Dale? Dr. Dale, Pastor Dale.
Well,
where do we go from here?
Well, I have all sorts of. And that's one of the reasons that this voter up in J is because obviously there's a real push and there are people trying to suppress the vote. We need to fight that.
Yes.
But we need to let people know that we can't stop there. That we need to begin it. And I use entrepreneurship and reducing poverty as really a driver.
Okay.
And I can say that with anybody because there's nobody that I've run across who believes that poverty is where it should be.
Yes.
There's nobody that I've run across who thinks that we are supporting entrepreneurship the way we should. So I stick with those issues that are common to everyone and really see and begin to hold people accountable.
Wow. Now,
so often we talk about symptoms of problems.
Yes.
But the reality, we say, property taxes. We gotta reduce property taxes. Well, that's a symptom of a deeper problem. And the problem is the rateables, the taxes of the local businesses.
Yes.
The problem is that we have, all these school systems. New Jersey is the fourth most segregated school system in the country.
Wow, I didn't know that. I did
and
not know that.
Not Alabama, not Mississippi, but New Jersey. Yeah, it's because, for example, my daughter is here in New Brunswick, and so
Yes.
New Brunswick is 95% Black and Latino.
Yes.
East Brunswick, right next door, is 90% Asian and white.
Wow.
If you merge the two districts, you'd have a diverse group.
But they won't do it.
A diverse school. And they won't do it because of local control.
Yeah. So your thinking is now that we need to get rid of some of the municipalities, and because I know at one point.
No.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dale.
Well, you don't have to get rid of the municipalities. You can still have the municipalities.
Okay.
But and you don't have to get rid of the school district. But you really should allow people within a county certainly to move around.
Okay. But
because diversity, is so critical at this time in society.
Yeah. Now, to use your word, how do we influence those people to see that diversity is a positive move?
Well, part of it is it's hard. I mean, it's hard.
Yes.
And so I think, rather than kind of that's a very controversial issue to try to do shared services and reduce that because people are so paranoid.
Yes.
But by educating people about some of these other issues and showing people that we can actually do something about property taxes or poverty or other things, that opens people up to new ideas.
Yes.
And the trouble is that, as great, and I know there's some great people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and so on, that they'll never tackle property taxes.
Got you.
Because you have to give up too much of their real estate to do that.
Yes.
Understood. And I think we need to begin to push people. So, there are no easy answers, but if we can start to create a dialogue around common issues, and I'm telling you, you're right at the heart of the issue.
Yes.
I really think that if we start talking about entrepreneurship, not about, getting rid of home rule and we really start doing that, we can get people to become much more open to other items.
Wow.
I really think entrepreneurship is the one thing that can save this country.
Yeah.
Because the divide we have right now is hard.
One of my former board members, or still board member, my very dear friend Dennis Helms, he would say that entrepreneurship is the great equalizer. And based on this conversation, I'm really understanding it more and more. It doesn't matter if you're black or brown. It talks about creativity and possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we can talk more about entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial spirit, then everybody would have an opportunity to pursue something that they're passionate about. But I just wanted to ask this question here. So with all the research that you're doing at Fairleigh Dickinson, how does the institution influence family entrepreneurship across the state and across the country? How are you able to do that? How are you doing that now?
Well, there are a couple of interesting. So one of the programs. So we've been doing this program called Veterans Launching Ventures.
Yes.
For about 12 years, and the program got some this year got a nice article about it.
Yes.
And Kevin, this article we'd have typically 20 people in the program, but this article, which went across the country, had us go viral.
Okay.
We had over 500 people apply to our program. So we've expanded this program to have 3 elements within the program where we take, in 9 weeks, we take entrepreneurs and help them develop business plans, veteran entrepreneurs or family members of veterans.
Yes.
And many of those are family businesses. And so by doing this training, and then we support them, we have some pro bono consultants and other consultants who really help them go forward. That right there is starting to make a change. And we're in 40 states.
Yes. Doing this out of the Rothman Institute.
We also were able to bring in a small business development center that I mentioned earlier. And so we brought one in. So under me at the Rothman Institute, we now are able to provide free consulting services for businesses in the area in northern New Jersey.
Wow.
So we're really providing that kind of support for that. We also are a member of 17 chambers. And so I'm speaking to chambers. I was at the Mercer Burlington Regional Chamber talking about what we're talking about.
Yes.
There. And so as we talk to more people, and that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying on this, I've tested out.
Yes.
That people, this really, really is a common issue.
And speaking of Chamber of Commerce, one of the things that I've found interesting is that even diversity amongst the Chamber of Commerce, that needs to be changed. And I think that if we can influence that change to take place, because they are at the ground level for talking about entrepreneurship and business development, I think we've got a key success model right there if we can begin to do that, right?
Well, and one of the things that we need to get the people like you and me and others, to get more people of color in the mix.
Yes.
Because I think that's, when you talk about the schools and others, I think that's the game changer, is that I talked about influence.
Yes.
The people of influence, they've grown up. When I went to Princeton, you don't know how many people had never talked to someone, at the same academic level as them who was black. They never talked to them. It's like, wow, and you play tennis? What? Black people don't play tennis? What? And the misconception, because there was a lot, and that's one of the reasons that the school diversity is so important, because that's when kids can realize that, and that's why sports, as you know, is so important.
Absolutely.
Because you're playing with black and white kids, you realize, hey, we're all the same.
Yes.
But if you don't talk to them and you have people in your ear saying these people are bad, you're going to have the division that we have.
Yes, very true. Now I want to do something funny with you right now.
Yeah.
It's Sunday morning. You've got to give a sermon to your church about being a spiritual influencer, How do you start that sermon off, Dale? I mean, Dr. Dale, Pastor Dale.
Well, I start the sermon off with, obviously, that God is working through me. This isn't about me.
Yes.
It's that, and you start there. But then you really talk about, because it really isn't me, at least in the Methodist Church, the minister is not the supreme. It's really about how do we take up the mantle
yes.
of Jesus, and throughout the Bible, there's this about us really helping others, loving our brothers and sisters,
yes,
loving each other, and that the spiritual influence that we're all called to use this to really help others.
Excellent.
And so I would go, I would kind of, pull out some scripture and others and go through that. And I've done that, actually.
Okay.
I would talk about poverty, which I've done as well.
Okay. So now, using my crystal ball, where is Dr. Dale, the entrepreneur, 3 years from now?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not, people have asked me to run for office and do other things. And I'm not, who knows what God has for me. But right now it's having conversations with you and really, I'm obsessed with this poverty thing.
Okay.
And therefore I'm obsessed with this entrepreneurship thing. And I've talked to groups that were big Trump supporters, and I've talked to groups that are big Biden supporters.
Yes.
And have been able to get them to buy into this concept. So I think 3 years from now, we're going to have more of an entrepreneurial state and more support for it.
Okay.
And especially in the urban community. And I'm hoping that as a pastor, I'll be able to get other churches to see the value of entrepreneurship and make that part of the program, working with you.
Awesome.
Really bring your program into churches could be, not just in the Trenton area, but around the state.
Absolutely.
Could be a game changer.
Absolutely. So we're not going to consider this an endorsement or anything, but if you were to run, just know that I will support you because I love your passion, I love your vision, and you're Methodist. That's what can't go wrong.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and people have said, you run to win, but the reality is that I think, and this going to your question too, that I think entrepreneurs, I think family businesses, I think the Black and Brown communities, need to begin to hold politicians accountable, because there's a lot of talk in campaigns, but not a lot of action after a victory. Yeah, and I think part of this, or even if I ran and I was able to garner enough support that I could go to either party and say, these are our demands, this is our agenda. And what are you going to do?
And that's the key. And I don't want to make light or little of it. I think the key is not so much to win, although that would be a good thing, but to run, to know that you are influencing other folks who know that this should be the new agenda that we're looking to have, the entrepreneurial agenda.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and one party has typically overlooked this base, and one party has taken this base for granted.
Yes. And
unless there's a candidate that gets it, that really gets it.
Yes.
You may need a third person to come out and then say, hey, I'll drop out of the race if you agree to these programs.
Absolutely. Yes.
And we'll see. And if that happens, it could be a real model around the country.
Absolutely.
On how you get an agenda going.
Well, from listening to you now, I think you certainly have the financial backing to take anything that we've talked about thus far and turn it into a national and regional model, certainly a state model. I mean, you've got some big names supporting you. You've got some big time exposure. So I know you would do fantastic in that vein.
Well, thank you. But the thing I'd say is it's not about me.
Understood.
This isn't. It's really about us, and it's about and I've just seen so many good people who are Democrats and who are Republicans.
Yes.
Whose hands are tied.
Yes.
Because of the party.
Yes.
Who want to do the right thing. So maybe this even frees some people up to speak up.
Yes.
And say, I'm for this too. I'm for this too. So we'll see. I mean, who knows what God has. No days promised us, but my view, Kevin, and my fear is that the world will not be any better if because Dale was alive. My thing is, if I'm alive and I'm having fun and doing stuff, but the world's not better, then what did I live for?
Yes.
But I know you're the same way. You've got to move the envelope.
Absolutely. But
and it's fun.
But here's the other thing that I love about you, Dale. You're so humble. And I think that we need the humbleness to be there as we move, I guess, certain platforms forward. So my next question is the same question, crystal ball, 3 years from now, what is Pastor Dale doing with his church, his community?
Well, that's a great question because I'm trying to begin to do church differently.
Okay.
I'm inviting folks who are agnostic, who are atheists, who are Muslim, who are Jewish, and because God didn't make denominations.
Yes.
And that if you really look at, Jesus was a figure in these denominations. And so really bringing people together and and it's not about your ideology.
Yes.
It's about loving your neighbor. It's about caring for other people. And I think there's a silent majority out there that are spiritual but not religious.
Yes.
That also don't want this conflict and fight and are willing to come together for the good, not just of this country, but of the world.
Very true. Very true.
And we're starting to see some of that with this horrible invasion in the Ukraine, that people are coming out and are coming together who weren't together before.
Yes. Yes. That's a whole nother topic, but I like the fact that you can see so much unity from just around the world supporting their demands of saying, we're going to fight for our country.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
With the time that we have left, and certainly if we need to take more time, we can do that. Where do you think we go on a national level in terms of us doing business and understanding business with our brothers and sisters across the way, like in Haiti or over in Africa? How do we develop more of an entrepreneurial tide there? Because you had mentioned earlier in the conversation that a lot of times in those communities, in those countries, you see a black president.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we develop those? How do we develop those relationships to expand where we're doing business larger? Or I guess.
Well, when I was, the more I talk about this, I realize, in some ways I'm kind of like Forrest Gump, right? You remember Forrest Gump was in the right places at the right time.
Yeah.
So I was in South Africa actually during apartheid in 1986 for a Rotary Group Study Exchange program, and I happened to be the first black on the floor of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange during trading hours because the Jewish, I was a financial planner, a certified financial planner, and the Jewish group wanted to challenge the white racist system.
Yes. And
they put me on which was an interesting thing. But when I was in Africa, I realized that the colonialists, they drew the country map around geography, not around tribes.
Wow.
So they drew it as if you put the Russians and the Americans together.
Yes.
And so it forced the conflict that has permeated so much of Africa. And what happens with that is that a lot of people grew up learning the bad aspects of leadership.
Got you.
It's about me. It's about, taking advantage of the land. It's about all this stuff. So many of the leaders of these countries were trained by thugs.
Yes.
and they were influenced to do that.
Yes.
And so that's part of it. But there's such a strong, I think there are more Haitians in New York City than there are in Haiti. So there's a strong connection with every country,
yes.
and who are entrepreneurs.
Yes.
First of all, so bringing that national, if I'm working with a woman who just got here from Jamaica, who's developed this amazing cleaning product that's all natural.
Yes.
And Shark Tank called her about being on their show because she's been so successful on her own.
But
so they're there.
But you know what I find so interesting about that, though, is that I would say in the past 6 months, since we've gone through this George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, you see more, you see the television stage, you see everybody giving more time to African Americans and people of color. But where were they 3 years ago or 5 years ago?
Right.
So I take that sometimes with a grain of salt because I really want to know where is the consistency? Is this now going to be my new normal? Is this my new reality now? Or is this something to appease me for the next 6 or 7 months until I forget about this?
Well, but Kevin, so that's a great, because what happens is it's up to us to keep the momentum.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's up to us to keep really push the envelope and continue to get folks to continue to do that.
Yes.
Because you know how everything, it's hot now and then it disappears.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, sometimes my mother and I, we watch TV, like a Monday, Tuesday night. And one night I was watching TV, a major network, every show during prime time was an African-American show. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe this. And I said to my mother, let's see if this is still on the air a year from now.
But one of the, and the listeners are going to think I'm crazy because I'm just involved in too much stuff. But one of the things we're doing now is, I do this TV show.
Yes.
Of Family Business World and Entrepreneur State of Mind.
Yes.
I definitely want you on.
Okay.
And we now are starting this, I started the Black Excellence Network.
Yes.
So last year we had started something called blackexcellence.org.
Yes.
And I founded the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame and the Black Inventors Hall of Fame, and we did their inaugural induction ceremony in Tulsa, 100 years after the race massacre there.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and so we did, and that was just we had some amazing people there. Ben Crump was there. He happened to be there. He came, and Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas and others came to our program.
Yes.
And so this idea of the Black Excellence Network, in fact, somebody just quoted to me, when Mr. Johnson founded Black Entertainment Television, he was, people were challenging him and said, well, why isn't there educational stuff? And he goes, it's Black Entertainment Television.
Yes.
It's not Black Educational Television.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is creating Black Excellence Network.
Yes.
So we want to pick up that void. So we want to have shows like yours and others where we talk to people about excellence. There's so much excellence, and I learned this with the Halls of Fame.
Yes.
Kevin, there is so much excellence in the community, and it's not to the exclusion of anybody else. It's just really highlighting that excellence. And so one of the examples that I give, because people have said, well, why do you need a Black this and a Black that? And I said, America is like a football team. And the football team that wins the Super Bowl is the team that has people playing very different roles.
Yes.
Your center is not your quarterback. Your wide receiver is not your tackle.
Yes.
And so the team that wins the Super Bowl has excellence in every one of those positions. Well, that's America. We have an excellent we want Black excellence. We want Italian excellence. We want Irish excellence. We want Indian excellence. We want Latino excellence. And that will make us stronger as a country.
Absolutely, yes.
The same way it makes the football team stronger. So that's what I say to folks, and people need to understand that it's important to celebrate Black excellence for the good of the country, as well as Italian excellence,
Absolutely.
as well as the Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr.
Yes.
The racial interaction and those things. Those are the wonderful things about America that we should be celebrating.
I love it. Wow. Now, so what I'm going to do, Dr. Dale, is I'm going to give you a few minutes to jump on the platform to kind of share and say anything that you wish to say in terms of anything that we might have missed out.
Well, first, Kevin, just thank you so much for this opportunity. I mean, I've admired you, and ever since I learned what you're doing with people of all ages, but especially young people with entrepreneurship. And so I just encourage everybody out there to remain positive and to be optimistic about the future. That one of the realities is that as horrible as many of the shootings are that were highlighted because of that, we've made progress as a country. It's just that things were much worse and quiet. But we have to vote her up.
Yes.
America, not only just Jews, we have to take the responsibility. One of the realities is human beings have never had more influence than they do at this point in time, Kevin, because social media and others have given us opportunity and information that we never had before.
Yes.
The trouble is we're brainwashed to think we need to vote for somebody and rely on them to make it for us. We need to start challenging for the things we want. If our community is poor, that's unacceptable in America. We need to challenge the people who are elected. What are you doing about it? Yes. We need to challenge our educational system if it's imbalanced or segregated. We need to challenge our court system, which is among the worst in the worst public agencies in the country.
Yes.
If people are sitting in jail for months and months who didn't do anything because they can't get their act together. And you have some leaders doing that, and we rely on those leaders, but we need to step up. We need to write letters. We need to come to meetings and start doing it. So this idea of voter up America, voter up New Jersey, voter up Black America, voter up Latino America, let's make this country our own, and let's make it the kind of wonderful place that it could be. So that's my final statement, Kevin. This is great.
Brother Dale, Dr. Dale, Pastor Dale, thank you so much. You have been a wonderful guest, man. I thank you so much. So let's stay connected. But before we go, can you give our listening audience some contact information once again as to how they can reach you, perhaps support you and follow you?
Well, yes, please. So my email at FU is dcaldwell,
yes,
CALDWELL at SDU, Fairleigh Dickinson University, SDU.edu. And the website is the Dale Caldwell Foundation.org or .com. So the Dale Caldwell Foundation.org.com. And that's where we have a lot of the programs that we're working on. And again, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Brother Dale, this has been a pleasure. Let's stay connected, and we're going to do some great things in the future together, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Okay, appreciate you, man.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Appreciate you, man. Bye-bye.
That concludes another episode of The Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. We hope you found this episode informative and enlightening. If you have any questions or comments about any of our episodes, please call 609-731-9311 or email Kevin at minding-our-business.com. We look forward to joining us for our next one. Until next time.